We've been looking for 10 years for a property to, a bit of farming land to spend our retirement. I thought pottering around, but I think Garry wanted to do a bit more than that. And we had no luck, but one day he came home from Point Lonsdale to find me at home, and he said, come with me, I've found some land we could buy. And it appeared that we had the opportunity to buy the western half of the shell grit works. And so I hopped in the car and out we went, and I walked all over it, and it has two lovely rises at each opposite end of the long, thin property, which neither of those rises have been mined for shell grit. It also had the drainage easement, which we call a creek now, in the middle of it, and we had a very long frontage to Lake Victoria. And I'm a bird watcher. Missy, I'm not a twitcher, I'm a bird watcher, but I have been known to do a twitch fairly recently. Went all the way to South Australia to see some special parrots. So you are half right. Twitchers are people who go somewhere to see something particular. But I had seen often lots of migratory birds roosting on the northern side of Lake Victoria. But once we bought the property in the lockdown, there were no birds roosting on the northern part of the lake because the lake was chock-a-block full. As Garry says, the water all comes down from the Colandina, and so there was no beach on our side. For probably 18 months there was no beach. And then all of a sudden everything dried up, and even the drainage creek dried up. So it changes a fair bit, but as far as I know there's been no flooding in Point Lonsdale, so that's good. Now the birds on the farm, I have a list of about 86 species. Now if you said to me I want to go and do some bird watching on your farm, we would be lucky to see 20. So we've got the locals, and then we've got the visitors who blow in or fly over or whatever. And the other thing that bothered me at first was the shell grit works bring in their shell grit from South Australia and they wash it. And something, which I assume is sand, spews out of this pipe past the boundary fence and comes out into the water on our part of the shore. And I thought, oh, we don't really want that, do we? But it has made a beautiful sandbar, and the swans gather there all the time. Lots of migratory birds gather there. All sorts of birds gather there. So now I'm quite happy to have that artificial sandbar. Now, I'm going to show you, this one is what we used to call it a mountain duck when we were younger. It's now called an Australian or Australasian shell duck. And it's a very big duck. And I'm going to whiz through these. I've got a lot of photos, and I know I don't have time for all the photos, so I will talk about the ones that are special helpers like these. These are, well, some people call them bin chickens. I call them Australian white ibis, and we see them on the farm most days, and sometimes they have straw-necked ibis with them, but they're very good pest controllers, so that's what we call them, the pest controllers. This is a black kite. The black kite flies around often, you see it when you're driving up the highway to Geelong. The black kite is also the bird that up in the north of Australia drops the burning sticks to set another fire going so that they can get more food. So it's a very pretty bird. We have lots and lots of swans on the lake, and I chose this photo because I like the way their beaks are so shiny and vibrant. Anyway, they gather a lot in front of my new bird hide, which after 3 years Garry built me the bird hide with my help. And it's right opposite the sandbar, so it's a perfect place for me to sit in there with my camera And now I try and capture different actions, not just, a bird on the water sort of thing. Black-faced cuckoo shrike, when it lands, it shuffles its wings, so that's a good way to identify it. And it also has a flight mode, which I call flap, flap, glide. This is one of our favourites. This is a black-shouldered kite. It's a raptor, so it's one of the birds that hovers over the grass and then drops down to get a lizard or something. At the moment, the pair of black-shouldered kites have 2 youngsters, and they come and sit in the mooners and they squeak and squawk for food, and they're really easy to see. So, and there's what they look like when they're about to drop down. This used to be called a black-winged stilt, has very long red legs, and we see them quite often on the lake. I think it's a very elegant bird with a long spiky beak. Later on in my pictures I've got a photo of one with a youngster, so I'll show you that later. This is a blue-winged parrot, and it's part of the same family as the orange-bellied parrot. And on our farm we have the really good glasswort and grass seeds and things that the orange-bellied parrot would absolutely love. But they haven't found our property just yet. But when they migrate from Tasmania, where they breed right down in the wilderness, they do come to the southern shores of Victoria. So I'm ever hopeful. And Garry thinks sometimes I'm a bird whisperer, so you never know. This little chap, it's smaller than it looks in this photo, but it's a brown thornbill. So they have a tiny little bill and they buzz around a lot in the moona trees. So we generally hear them if we don't see them most days. This is a pair of Caspian terns, and for 2 years in a row I've seen them on our shoreline near the bird hide courting, bowing, and in this picture the male is on that side and the other one's got a fish that he brought her. So they were getting ready, but they don't breed on our shore, they go to Mud Island. And one year, it might have been last year or the year before, one of the adults brought the young back. So I just saw them just one day. So this is the thing about birding, you just have to be at the right place at the right time. But it was obviously a youngster, so that was a thrill. I thought that was very special. Here we are, you can see what happened. This is a green shank, a common green shank, which we've seen on our lake. It goes up to the northern hemisphere to breed, so it's a migratory shorebird. And often if you're walking along Swan Bay, you can see 10 or a dozen, and they rest with one leg tucked up, and then if they want to move, they just hop. They don't bother to put the other leg down. And I don't know whether you recognise that's a starling with all those spots on it. It's quite pretty if you can see it, close enough and in the sun. I think I took that one down near the new viewing platform at the boat ramp. But starlings are the only birds on our farm that have actually used our nest boxes. This is the crested pigeon. It's the one that when it flies, its wings whistle. I don't know why that keeps wanting to be small, but that's a crimson rosella, one of the ones we hope to use the box, but they're a bit fussy, I think. And this is the eastern rosella. We often see 4 or 5 of those flying around the property, and they have looked at the boxes, but for some reason they're not interested either. That's a green finch, common green finch, which is in the same family as the goldfinch. And I reckon this one should be goldfinch because it's got gold on its wings. And the other one's got red and things. This is a cuckoo. It's called a fantail cuckoo. And they come in spring, and you know about them. They just take eggs out of other people's nests and put their own in. They don't bring up the children or... So when you start hearing the cuckoos, you know that spring is coming. That's a female flame robin. Now the flame robin has, unfortunately I don't have a good photo of the male because they're quite hard to photograph. The male has an orangey red breast that goes right up to under the beak. And this is his female, and she looks pretty dull, and most of the female birds are quite dull because they're the ones that have to sit on the nest, and they're in danger from the raptors up above. Anyway, she's pretty. And last year I actually saw a young male flame robin in our mooners, which was nice. That's the lovely grey fantail. We have those on the farm most of the time. They are very friendly birds. They sort of, if you're walking along a bush track anywhere, you often see them following along, and maybe we're disturbing the insects for them, but I like to think that they like following us. That's a grey shrike thrush. Some of you might have those in your garden. They have a lovely call. These are grey teal. They have a very pale throat. And these two birds, I've only seen them this year for the first time. They're called hardhead ducks. The one closest is the male with a white patch across the bill and a bright white eye and a white patch on the tail. And behind him is his duller female. But there is a pair here, so who knows? We might get some ducklings this year. I don't know whether anyone knows what this is. It's a hoary-headed grebe in breeding plumage. And just this week I saw, I think you call it a raft of small birds land on Swan Bay in front of our house. And I had a look through the binoculars, and it was a whole lot of grebes. So they tend to go around in rafts. That's a hooded plover. Hoodies are usually on the ocean beach, on the southern ocean beaches, because they feed on the wrack from the seaweed. But I have seen them on our shoreline, and I saw two fledglings from the season before, on our shoreline in front of the bird, where the bird hide now is, one day. And because there were two the same age, and there had been two fledglings that fledged at Bowen Heads on the Spit, I thought it must be the same bird. So that was pretty special. And there's another couple of young hoodies from another season. This is another cuckoo. It's the Horsfield's bronze cuckoo. And it has lovely shiny feathers on its back, if you can get it in the sun. And there's another picture of its front. It's got black bands across its breast, but they have a gap down the middle. So that's, we see these every year, and we hear them when they call rather than find them, and then I just go looking, because that's the way to learn what call that. You just go and find the bird. That's what I was told very early on. If you don't know what it is, go and find it. Not always easy. This is a photo of a little eagle taken on the farm. Now, one day I was walking just on the flat part, and I saw a shadow in one of the old mooners, because we can see into the mooners now that we've pulled all the boxthorn out. And the bird had its back to me, but I saw its feathery legs, and I thought, oh, maybe that's an eagle of some description. So out it went. As soon as it saw me, it flew off with lots of small birds chasing it away. But luckily it went over the mooners and came back towards me, and I had my camera on the right setting and ready And I'm very proud of this photo. I like it. This is a little egret. We have quite a lot of little and great egrets that we see on the farm, and they and the white-faced heron all stand near the little bridge that goes over our creek, and they have a smorgasbord there because there's tiny little fish that are in that creek. So this one, we haven't named this one, but the white-faced heron we call Senor. This is some of the rubbish that we find in the lake or under the grass, and that is a little pied cormorant. It's just had a swim. That's the masked lapwing. We have 2 pairs of masked lapwings, one at each end of the property. They have had young, but not often because they're very vulnerable. That's Nankeen kestrel. They breed in the Shellgrit Works shed every year. We don't know where the other birds breed, the black-shouldered kite. That's a New Holland honeyeater, taken at my house, but we have seen them at the farm. That's a Pacific black duck. I'm sure everybody recognises that. This pair of pied oyster catchers, I have seen them at the farm, but these were taken opposite our house, and one of them, the front one's got a leg flag. And I sent away the information because people like to know where they've been seen. That bird's 20 years old and it's still partnered up. And they breed on, they're beach nesting birds too. And this is the one I mentioned earlier of the black-winged stilt, which is now called a pied stilt. They changed the names for some reason. But I don't know whether you can see that it's got its legs bent forward. So in actual fact, that long bit at the bottom is a foot, and the bend is the ankle, and you can see another line going down the bottom. That's its baby underneath. I haven't seen that at home, but I saw it at Port Fairy. It's interesting, so interesting that the legs bend forward, or the feet like that. And this is another photo of those black-winged pied stilts, I beg your pardon, with a hard head grooming itself in front of them, and this is taken from my bird hide. The 2 at the back and the 1 at the front are adults, and the 2 in the middle with the smudgy marking around their eyes are juvenile. This is a pink-eared duck. You may not be able to see the pink just behind the black markings over the eye. That's a better one. They're lovely. They've got an unusual beak, and I have seen one on the lake, so that was pretty special. That's a rainbow lorikeet. I'm sure you all know that. This is the red wattlebird, and there's a gang of those. We call them the gang. They're always on the farm and flying from moona to moona. That's a very fat or fluffed up red-browed finch. They've only come this year for the first time, and they came in a flock. This is a red-capped plover, which we see on our shoreline most of the time. It stays, it doesn't migrate, but it nests on the shellgrit. There's another picture which I really like because I think, I wonder what it's looking at. I wonder what that is up there. I love the expression. And these are also migratory birds. They're not here all the time. They're red-necked avocets. And they have a very long curled beak and grey legs. And then when they roost in front of the bird hide, this is a mixed flock. There are the ones with the brown heads and the grey legs are the avocets, and the rest of them are banded stilts, which are in the same family as the ones that I showed you just recently. And they have a chest band, a brown chest band, which you can just see on a couple of them. It might be hard for you to see them. They like salty places, so they tend to come when the lake's, a bit more salty. This is the little one, doesn't look little here, but it is. It's a red-necked stint that flies all the way to Siberia, and it weighs about the same as a matchbox. And that's how it looks when it's got its colouring. It's got its red neck and it's getting ready, and it's fat too, it's getting ready to migrate to Siberia. How about that? Isn't that amazing? That's the royal spoonbill, silver gulls. These are silver eyes, which come from Tasmania. When they've got that sort of orangey colour on their flanks, they've most likely migrated from Tassie. That's a singing honeyeater. That's a spiny-cheeked honeyeater. Spotted dove. There are the straw-necked ibis. These are calamanthus or striated field wrens. They like to be on top of the glasswort near the lake, and they sing beautifully. And this is my final photo because it's a superb fairy wren, and we have at least 3 families on our 50 acres, and they are so interested in what you're doing. If we spend time working in the veggie garden, as soon as we go away, they appear and they go and well, what you been doing today, I have heaps more, but I know it's time to stop. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed that.